Waverly Motel had always been a relic of a bygone era. Nestled on the outskirts of a forgotten town, its once vibrant neon sign now flickered erratically, casting ghostly shadows across the cracked pavement. The building itself was a long, low structure, its paint peeling and windows fogged with years of neglect. For most, the Waverly was a last resort, a place to rest your head when no other option presented itself. On this particular night, the rain fell relentlessly, drumming against the roof like a sinister heartbeat. The motel's few remaining lights struggled to pierce through the dark and stormy evening. Inside the office, the air was heavy with the scent of mildew and stale coffee. Behind the counter, a weary man with thinning hair and tired eyes sat watching a flickering old television. His name was Henry, the last of a long line of motel keepers. The door chimed softly as a young woman stepped inside, shaking off the rain and clutching a faded red umbrella. Her name was Lily Parker, a writer seeking solitude to finish her latest novel. She had driven for hours, her car's headlights barely cutting through the relentless downpour, and she was grateful to find a place to rest. Henry looked up with a forced smile. "Welcome to the Waverly Motel. How can I help you?" Lily hesitated, glancing around at the grimy surroundings. "Do you have a room available?" He nodded and handed her a rusty key on a tarnished keychain. "Room 12. It's at the far end of the hall. The rain will make the road slippery, so be careful." With a murmured thanks, Lily took the key and made her way outside, her footsteps muffled by the rain-soaked gravel. Room 12 was a small, dingy space at the end of a long, dimly lit corridor. The door creaked loudly as she pushed it open, revealing a room with faded floral wallpaper and threadbare carpet. A single bed dominated the space, and a small, ancient television sat atop a rickety dresser. Lily unpacked her belongings and tried to settle in, but the room felt unnervingly cold despite the heater running on full blast. She shrugged off the chill, attributing it to the old motel's lack of insulation, and began to work on her manuscript. As the night wore on, Lily noticed a faint whispering sound. It was soft at first, like a distant murmur, but it grew louder as the hours passed. The whispers seemed to come from all around her, their words indistinct but undeniably menacing. She tried to ignore them, focusing on her work, but the unsettling noise made it impossible to concentrate. Suddenly, the whispers stopped. An eerie silence enveloped the room, so profound that Lily could hear her own heartbeat thudding in her ears. She felt a chill run down her spine as a cold draft swept through the room, extinguishing the dim bedside lamp. The darkness was absolute, broken only by occasional flashes of lightning illuminating the room in stark, fleeting bursts. Lily fumbled for her phone to use as a flashlight, but before she could turn it on, she heard a soft, high-pitched giggle. It was followed by a rustling sound, like someone or something moving around in the room. Her heart raced, and she felt an overwhelming sense of dread. Summoning all her courage, Lily stood up and groped her way to the door, her fingers trembling as she fumbled with the lock. As she opened the door, the hallway was eerily quiet. The rain outside had slowed to a drizzle, and the dim light from the corridor seemed to flicker with an otherworldly glow. She ventured out into the hallway, her footsteps echoing off the peeling walls. The whispers started again, more insistent this time, as if urging her to turn back. But Lily was determined to find the source of the noise. She reached the end of the corridor, where Room 12's neighbor, Room 11, lay in darkness. The door to Room 11 was ajar, creaking slightly with the wind. Lily pushed the door open and peered inside. The room was identical to hers but seemed to have been abandoned for years. Dust lay thick on the furniture, and the air was stale and oppressive. As she stepped inside, the door slammed shut behind her with a deafening bang. Panicked, Lily turned to face the room. The whispers had returned, louder than ever, swirling around her like a malevolent storm. She felt a cold hand grip her shoulder, and she spun around to find herself face to face with a spectral figure woman in old-fashioned clothing, her face gaunt and hollow, eyes hollow pits of darkness. "Help me," the ghostly figure moaned, her voice barely more than a whisper. "Help us, they are coming." Lily's breath caught in her throat. Who's coming?" The ghost's eyes widened in terror, and she pointed a trembling finger towards the wall, where a dark stain seemed to writhe and pulse with a life of its own. The stain grew, spreading like ink in water, until it formed a grotesque face, twisted and leering. From the face emanated a deep, guttural laugh that resonated through Lily's bones. Suddenly, the walls of the room seemed to close in on her, the space compressing as the shadows grew thicker. The temperature dropped even further, and Lily could see her breath forming clouds in the icy air. The whispers reached a crescendo, merging into a single, anguished cry that filled the room. Desperate, Lily rushed back to the door, pounding on it and shouting for help. But no one came. The ghostly figure vanished, leaving behind only the overwhelming sense of dread. The whispers continued, now forming words in a language Lily couldn't understand but felt instinctively was a chant of some ancient and malevolent ritual. In a final, desperate act, Lily grabbed a lamp from a nearby table and hurled it at the dark stain on the wall. The lamp shattered and the stain began to recede, but not before a final, terrifying scream echoed through the room. The air grew still once more, and the oppressive darkness lifted slightly. Lily stumbled out of room 11 and back into the hallway, her mind reeling from the nightmarish encounter. She ran to the office, where Henry was still seated behind the counter, his expression unreadable. "I need to leave," Lily said, her voice trembling. "I've seen things, terrible things." Henry nodded, his eyes full of an unreadable sorrow. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "We've had many travelers come and go, but some never truly leave." Lily fled into the night, the rain now a mere drizzle. As she drove away from the Waverly Motel, she glanced back at the dark silhouette of the building, its neon sign flickering one last time before it vanished into the stormy night. The Waverly Motel stood silent once more, waiting for its next guest, its corridors forever echoing with the whispers of those who had stayed and never truly left. As Lily drove away from the Waverly Motel, she could hardly believe the nightmarish events she had witnessed. The rain had finally stopped, but a dense fog now enveloped the road, obscuring her vision and adding to her sense of disorientation. Her hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, her knuckles white as she fought to maintain control of the car. The hours passed in a blur, and as dawn began to break, Lily found herself on a desolate stretch of road. She was exhausted but felt a peculiar urge to drive further, to escape not just the motel but the lingering sense of dread that clung to her. Her thoughts kept drifting back to the spectral figure and the ghastly face on the wall. She couldn't shake the feeling that something had been left unfinished. Suddenly, her car's engine sputtered and died. Lily pulled over to the side of the road, her heart sinking as she realized she was stranded. She tried to restart the engine, but it only groaned weakly before falling silent. Desperate, she got out of the car and looked around. The fog was lifting, revealing an overgrown forest on one side of the road and a dilapidated farmhouse in the distance. With no other options, Lily decided to investigate the farmhouse. Her feet sank into the wet grass as she approached the rickety structure. The house seemed to have been abandoned for decades, with broken windows and a sagging roof. The front door was slightly ajar, creaking ominously as she pushed it open. Inside, the air was thick with dust and decay. Sunlight filtered through the grime-coated windows, casting eerie shadows across the cobweb-covered furniture. Lily's footsteps echoed in the silent house as she made her way through the musty rooms, her senses on high alert. She hoped to find a phone or a way to call for help. As she explored, she came across a small room at the back of the house. Its door was partially hidden by a tattered curtain. Pushing it open, she found an old wooden chest in the center of the room. The chest was covered in strange symbols, and it looked as though it had been sealed for a long time. Lily hesitated, but curiosity and a nagging sense of urgency drove her to open it. With a creak, the chest revealed a collection of old journals and a dusty photograph. She picked up the photograph and felt a chill run down her spine. It was a picture of the Waverly Motel, taken from an angle she recognized the exact spot where she had stayed. Standing in front of the motel were several people, their faces gaunt and hollow, similar to the spectral figure she had encountered. Among the journals was one that seemed different from the others. Its cover was embossed with the same symbols she had seen on the chest. She carefully opened it and began to read. The journal detailed the history of the Waverly Motel, revealing that it had once been a thriving business owned by a man named Thomas Waverly. According to the entries, The motel had been the site of a series of mysterious disappearances and tragedies over the years. The most chilling entry was dated just before the motel had been abandoned. It spoke of a dark ritual intended to summon entities from another realm, entities that were to be trapped within the motel's walls. The ritual had gone horribly wrong, and the entities had become bound to the motel, haunting it and preying on the souls of those who stayed there. As Lily read, she realized the connection between the ghostly figure she had seen and the dark forces described in the journal. The figure had been one of the entities trapped by the failed ritual, seeking release or redemption. The sun had risen fully by the time Lily finished reading. She knew she had to return to the Waverly Motel to confront whatever remained of the dark forces. She gathered the journals and the photograph, intending to use them as evidence to help her understand what she was dealing with. With renewed determination, she left the farmhouse and made her way back to her car. The drive back to the Waverly Motel felt surreal. The fog had lifted, and the sky was a clear blue, but Lily felt as though she was driving through a different world. When she arrived at the motel, it was as if time had stood still. The neon sign flickered in the same erratic pattern, and the building loomed ominously in the distance. Lily approached the office cautiously. Henry was still behind the counter, his expression unchanged. She placed the journal and photograph on the counter. "I need to finish what I started," she said firmly. "There are things I need to understand." Henry looked at the items with a heavy sigh. "It's not just about understanding," he said quietly. "It's about confronting the darkness that's been trapped there. You must be prepared for what you might find." With Henry's reluctant guidance, Lily returned to room 12. Armed with the knowledge from the journal, she prepared for a confrontation with the entities bound within the motel. She performed the ritual described in the journal, using the symbols and incantations to attempt to free the trapped souls and close the rift that had allowed the entities to haunt the motel. As she chanted the final words, the room seemed to pulse with a strange energy. The oppressive darkness lifted, and a blinding light filled the space. The whispers grew louder, then suddenly stopped, replaced by a profound silence. Lily felt an overwhelming sense of relief, as if a great weight had been lifted. When she opened her eyes, the motel seemed to have changed. The oppressive atmosphere was gone, and the rooms appeared less grim. Henry met her outside, his face showing a rare smile of relief. "The ritual worked," he said. "The entities are gone, and the souls trapped here are finally free." Lily nodded, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment. She knew that she had faced the darkness and emerged victorious. As she left the Waverly Motel behind, she felt a profound sense of closure. The once ominous building now stood as a quiet testament to the battle fought within its walls, its corridors no longer echoing with the whispers of those who had stayed and never truly left. Alright everyone, that brings us to the end of our story. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more content like this, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. And if you have similar stories you'd like to share with us, feel free to reach out. Thank you for watching, and until next time, take care.